Hello, my fellow sensitive people. Greetings from Whimsy, your favorite Whimsy, the tarot reader, the remote viewer. We're going to be talking a little bit about last night's meditation that I did. There's a couple things going on. I have a lot to announce, actually. The first is let's get the gruesome stuff over first. Okay, so we did a meditation on the Republican Senate, and there's it really looks like, for all intensive purposes, the Republican Party is dead. That is when you clear away the fluff, when you get into your deep meditative state, and you know, not what people are telling you, not people's agendas, but when you really clear away the fluff and you look at things as clearly as you can, the Republican Party is dead. Now, people are angry at Mitch McConnell because of his policies and the way he has handled the Senate. And that's okay. But from a collective consciousness perspective, what I was trying to convey is that if anybody is in pain, you will be in pain. Because human beings by nature are unbelievably empathic creatures. Whether we are consciously aware of it or not, another individual being in pain is having an effect on us. So we don't have to like Mitch McConnell, we don't have to like his politics, but if anybody is suffering, or if anyone is feeling grief, it's probably near impossible to cut ourselves off from it. If somebody suffers oppression, civil rights violations, the Holocaust, all of this is part of the collective consciousness, and we all suffer. And that is really the point that I'm trying to make. Not that we have to support what Mitch McConnell is doing, but that the suffering of others, whether we want to acknowledge, even our enemies, the suffering of our enemies causes us suffering. We want to be able to cut it off and say, good, I'm glad you're suffering. But the truth of the matter is, it is all suffering from a Buddhist perspective. And this is Buddhist compassion based. That's the technique I use. Everybody has their own method, and I honor that. But if you clear away the fluff and you simply are resonating from a place of compassion, ultimately we are all suffering. We are suffering. When somebody says, this suffering has changed me, and or we choose to hold on to our suffering, by doing that, the collective is suffering. And so to be released from our suffering is the best thing for the planet. And forgiveness is tied into that, in the sense that from a Buddhist perspective, to be released from the things that chain us and cause us suffering is the end of suffering. So that is the Buddhist understanding of detachment. Detachment is the act of forgiveness. So it doesn't mean that we support or endorse putting people in cages, putting children in cages. We condemn it because it goes against the Eightfold Path about how human beings should treat one another, because we're in it together, and any actions that we participate in which cause suffering in others will cause suffering in us, because it's just one organism, our common humanity. So traumatize children. You see that? Broken people create broken people. This is different than the New Age or the feudalistic view of karma that has been taught by ancient Hinduism, blame the victim, right? That's the old school. That way of thinking propped up feudalism. Right? If I can continue to convince the victim that it's her fault, I'll continue to control her through shame and guilt. She'll blame herself, and then she won't fight a revolution and take her power back. So the agenda of blaming the victim is to continue to prop up oligarchy and feudalism. Now, in modern Buddhism, that isn't the understanding of karma. The understanding of karma is more like fire. When fire burns, it burns everything. Doesn't care if it's a nice house, oh, it's a pretty house, a nice person, bad person. When you put that into the collective, everyone suffers. And so it becomes the karma of the collective, whether it's our fault or not. That is modern Buddhism. That is the modern Buddhist understanding of suffering. That is the modern Buddhist understanding of suffering. It is not an extension of feudalism or upholding feudalistic ideas to oppress the masses by blaming the victim. That's old school, and we need to get over it. We need to understand that it has a political agenda. When we blame the victim, we are propping up victim bashing and oppressing victims. And that's not modern Buddhism. So I'm glad to answer that question. So we got a couple things to go through. The first, that, as I mentioned, is that energetically, it looks like the Republican Party is dead. Now, getting to the point of accepting the fact that your party is dead and that you are about to be the one to push the lever that destroys the Republican Party, that is Mitch McConnell. Mitch McConnell's job is to tear the Republican Party apart at its seams and kill off the head of the beast. Right? So if the head of the Republican Party is Trump, if it is his party, and you are walking into the Senate and you are Mitch McConnell, you are cognizantly aware that by opening up the Senate and overriding the veto, you are basically destroying the Republican Party. Now you understand where Mitch McConnell is. That is where we are at when we look at the stages of grief. So Mitch McConnell is going to come to terms eventually, as will the rest of the party, to what is apparent to the rest of us. The beast is dead. Cut off the head of the beast. The Republican Party is dead. Now, where do they go from here? Only time will tell. But energetically, they're going to have to grieve. You know, we can play them some nice mantra music, help them get through the grief process. But I assure you, this party, as of today, I'll be the first to make the prediction, January 24th, 2019, the Republican Party died. That is what we are looking at. So I want to move on to Cohen and the fact that it was the Senate who subpoenaed Cohen. Part of that is to gain control of the narrative, right? Because it's a Republican Senate. So yes, they're trying to control the narrative. That's true. But it is also true that we are beginning to see the birth in the Senate of what will be impeachment hearings. Can you guys see that? So remember when I talked about how we're moving towards the point at which Lindsey Graham will have a nice little conversation with the president and say the votes are there to sign the articles of impeachment? That is the birth that we're seeing here with these types of subpoenas. We're moving towards the Senate, because the Republican Party is dead, whether they're consciously aware of it now. If you're talking about the Trump GOP Republican Party, it's dead. It's dead. It's dead. That is the message. So what you will see now, the patient is in ICU. He's been intubated, and now we just have to figure out the right time to pull the plug. That's the message. And the people in the room that have to do that Grassley. What do I hear when I tune into Grassley? We've got to stick together. We can't split the party. We can't split the party. If we do that, it's the beginning of the end. That's Grassley. So that lets you have a window into what the Republican Party in the Senate is up to and what the conversations are. Not to gloat. That's not the purpose of this. The purpose of this is to allow empathy so that we can heal the collective which is suffering. Okay, does everybody get that? Okay, great. So in terms of Cohen, when I get into his energy, I wanted to talk a little bit about Cohen. What he says inside his head. He says, "This man has ruined my life." That's what he's saying. Trump has ruined my life. But of course, Trump has not ruined Michael Cohen's life. Michael Cohen has ruined Cohen's life. Because if he had not met Donald Trump, he might have been he might have committed some petty crimes. He would have been the same guy whether he had met Trump or not. It's simply that Trump took advantage of somebody who was like Michael Cohen. So Michael Cohen needs to stop blaming Trump for ruining his life. If Michael Cohen was weak, if Michael Cohen was the kind of a guy that would skirt the law, that was true whether or not he met Trump or not. Now, I wanted to make some early predictions in terms of who I think is the leading candidate for the Democratic Party. There's been some exciting stuff going on in terms of people who are rising to the top. The cream is rising to the top. Who is going to take the Democratic nomination? I like a lot of people. I like Gillibrand is good. Elizabeth Warren. We see all the different people that are coming up. Who do I think is not going to run? I don't think that Bernie Sanders is going to run, and I don't think that the old guard is going to run. I don't. I think that they had their fun, and now it's time for new blood to come in. Who do I think is most likely to be nominated as the Democratic nominee for 2020? I think it's going to be Elizabeth Warren. Now, things change. People do have some problems with Elizabeth Warren. I get that. But the reason why I think it's going to be Elizabeth Warren is because she's a populist. And she is fighting the fight of the working person, the working man, the working woman. She's been very clear about her message, and she's channeling a type of FDR message. She really has studied Franklin Delano Roosevelt, Eleanor Roosevelt. You can really feel the energy of the New Deal around Elizabeth Warren. Now, if somebody else comes in, if Pelosi takes the presidency, which it's starting to move in that direction. I did not say anything negative about Mr. Pence or Mr. Pence's sexual orientation. That was not what I was hinting at, and that was not what the remote was about. It was about the psychological and physical strain of being in the White House over the last 2 years. And, I'd want to get out of there. So it's really more about that I picked up for Pence than outing anybody or any private information. So I wanted to be clear about that. But as it stands right now, energetically, when I look at all the people that are running, and I like all of them, they're all good, but I think that Elizabeth Warren is the most likely person to take the nomination at this point. Could change, but that's what I see. So I wanted to also say something about Robert Mueller's long game in the FBI, which I think is kind of interesting. So we had said that Robert Mueller wanted a full confession from Donald Trump, that if a federal prosecutor was going to get the whole sundae with the cherry on the top, it would be a full confession from the person that they suspect is the perp. Signed, sealed, delivered, I'm yours. So that is, it's pretty easy when you go into, I can see why that is what I picked up from Mueller, because that is exactly what a seasoned prosecutor from the FBI would want. Now, in terms of what the long-term goal is for Mueller and the FBI, it's to shut down the roots of income that feed the oligarchy. So finding those income sources that are propping up the oligarchs of Russia and then cutting it at its base. And for whatever reason, they have chosen not to cut at the base Deripaska. And so for that reason, you could argue that maybe some deal has been made between Robert Mueller and Deripaska, because Deripaska and Mueller have a relationship. Okay, you can see those threads coming together, because Deripaska has assisted Robert Mueller in the past in terms of being a go-between between Russia and the United States and getting people out of Iran, etc. So Deripaska has worked with Robert Mueller, so it wouldn't be surprising to me if under the cover they basically did some kind of a deal and they started cutting off the income of oligarchs in order to crush the oligarchy, shutting off their supply of money. Again, going back to trade routes, but also the fact that they're siphoning off money from known trade routes. That also comes up. So that is what Robert Mueller, the FBI, the CIA are trying to do right now. They're trying to find the money of the oligarchies, and they're trying to cut the flow. Okay, which helps me better understand why Putin keeps talking about trade and flow and trade routes. Deripaska, they're not going to touch as much. So any intelligent person, when you put the pieces together during your meditation, when you're consolidating, that is probably where your mind is going to go. All right, so I decided that I'm going to do a throw about just what's going to be happening with the energy of the United States over the next 2 to 3 weeks, because I think there's some big changes coming. And I just really want to stress that even though we don't agree with what the Republican Party is doing, as fellow human beings, anytime anyone experiences suffering or brings suffering in the world, anywhere in the world, collectively, we feel and we sense it. All right, so with good prayers, love in our hearts, we're just going to go ahead and open the cards and ask if there's anything that we need to know or prepare for in terms of what's coming up in the coming weeks for the presidency and for the country. Let's think good thoughts, people. I love the people that subscribe to this channel. I've had some nice conversations with you, and I think, wow, the people that watch my channel are could be friends of mine. Some of you are so nice, and some of you are so educated and well read, and you're teaching me things, and I think, oh wow, thank you for that. All right, so let's take a look at what we've got here. All right, so base card is 5 of Swords, walking away, right? You have a battle, you walk away. Inability to give up what you've worked so hard to build. This is really going back to what I had said about the death of the Republican Party. It will no longer be what it was, but this is exciting because now as the Trump Party dies, we can hopefully see the birth of another party that's going to, the new Republican Party was, the old Republican, or the Trump Party died today, but from the ashes we will see a new Republican Party, and you're not seeing it now, but it's coming, and it's okay. The oligarchies had to die, the bribes had to die. The dark money in DC has to die. It's become a harlot's den, right? We've done remotes about this. Everybody's bribed, everybody's blackmailed, and it had to get this ridiculous, it had to get this absurd before we finally did something about it. Now is a time of healing for the country. We're going into a time of healing. I think things are going to start to become stabilized in the next few weeks. Amidst the chaos, in the chaos will come order. That is basically the message here. From the chaos will come order, stability, a strong foundation. We are a very strong country, and NATO is strong, and Russia simply does not have the financial wherewithal to keep this going. Moving forward. Moving forward. Negotiating deals. So we're going to see more cooperation between the two parties. I always think of Queen of Wands as Nancy Pelosi, and I think she's an Aries, which is kind of interesting. Sun coming out, healing, look at this. Moving forward. Hopes and fears, stalemate. Final outcome, star, a new beginning. A new beginning. So from the death we are seeing right now, the walking away, the death of the Republican Party will come renewal. So it looks to me like I said, we see the death of the old ways, the death of the party, but from the ashes will come a new party. And I think that's good. It's going to be a more inclusive party. They're going to go back to their root beliefs, which is being physically conservative, promoting small businesses. They'll be, it's pretty gruesome. They're going to have to go through everything and start uncovering all the dark money, the bribed people, the blackmailed people. The hearings are going to go on forever. But what I see from the Senate subpoenaing Cohen is that this is the beginning of the end, and this is the beginning of the impeachment hearings. And on some level, the Senate knows that. And, we just have to think good thoughts. But, all right, so I'm going to go ahead and close. Thanks for watching, everybody, this remote. And please reach out to me if you have any questions about remotes and tarot readings. I still have some openings for Saturday, but I'm almost completely filled up, but I do still have some openings for tarot readings for Saturday if people want to try and get in. You can find my information below this video. So thanks for watching, everyone. Be strong, and thank you for your support. Take care. Bye.